Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. I'm Scotty Roberts, your host. This is the Intrepid Radio Program right here on my YouTube channel for now. Doing a podcast instead of a radio show this time. And we are at youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. If you're not there now, if you're watching in one of the other channels, come on over if you want to join our chat room. This is the best place to find the good chat. You can chat in other places. You can chat in Instagram. You can leave comments. You can chat in Facebook, over on Patreon, all those places. But they're not live chat. They're comment rooms. So come on over to the live interactive chat. You won't be able to see the chat in any of those other channels. I can see you here because I have the master control room, but you can't. So if you want to chat, you want to meet some of the other people who are regular listeners to this show, the chat room over on the YouTube channel is the place to do it. And those of you who are here now, what are you laughing at, Jason? So, hola, he says. Sorry, hola. Maybe I should put on my glasses and all the letters won't blend together, huh? Jason, welcome to the show. JP, Randall Flagg is here over in the chat room. Field Guy, of course. Yes, we can. You nailed it out there. So, I'm sure you will become the Lord Emperor now. So it's good to have you here, Lord Emperor. And Susie Q is here. Good to see you, Susie Q. Glad to have you. Everybody else, there's a whole bunch of you sitting out there now, just sitting on the outskirts, listening, watching. You are welcome to come into the chat room. I would love to have you here and get your thoughts on things. So tonight, let me preface this by saying, if you're a regular listener, you know me. Even if you're not a regular listener and you are aware of who I am and the things I say, I have a bias when it comes to politics. My bias is one, first of all, I've got a certain party that I will endorse, a candidate I will endorse, because, not that my endorsement means a damn thing, but other than to the handful of people I influence, or that in my sphere of influence, that's how I meant to say that. But despite having that, I like to think that I am also objective. There have been times where I've said, hey, Biden did the right thing on that. I want to congratulate him. I can't think of what it was. It may have been once or twice over the last 4 years. But I have said that. I have stood for what I believe is the balance in the middle. Even though there are some things I will go right on, you could never identify me as being far right or a far right wacko or anything like that. You can call me right. You can call me conservative. But I've always seen myself as kind of a middle of the roader, only because I want to. Here is something that you don't see an awful lot of in this election. And I think specifically more from one side of the election, you don't see a lot of people that are telling the truth just to tell the truth, just to disseminate fact. What I'm seeing an awful lot of is the left. A lot of campaign ads, a lot of things said that are repeats of things that they've already been told are not so. They've already been debunked. They've already been contradicted. But they keep telling them. Why? Why do they keep telling those stories? Why do they keep giving life to them? Because they are counting on people who don't look to facts, who don't think, who have no ability to critically think. They are counting on that segment. Well, it's not even a segment. The majority of our society, the citizenry in this country. They vote because they are of a party. They don't vote because they know anything about what's really going on. They don't look, they don't dig, they don't try to find answers. And oh my God, if they should find an answer, I saw a good example of that today. Who was it? It was Donaldson. Can't remember his first name off the top of my head. Black conservative from, I want to say South Carolina. I might be wrong. But Donaldson was giving some facts out, and somebody was resisting that from the left. And every fact he gave out, you could see her just shaking her head. Nope, nope, nope. I'm just not going to believe that. I'm not going to believe it. And he ended up at the points he said in his delivery on the topic they were talking about. He said, look, I'm in the Senate. I'm in that particular, I'm part of that board. I was there. And he says, as a matter of fact, he says, you don't have to take my word. He pulls out a sheaf of paper. He says, I've got it all in writing right here. You can take a look at it. And she didn't even want to do that. There are people that are so set on who they want to vote for that no amount of fact will change their minds. Now, people will say that counts to both sides, doesn't it? Well, the right doesn't do that. The left doesn't do that. And here's the question, though. When you go to the facts, who's right and who's wrong? If you're just looking at facts, what was the famous thing that came out a few years ago? Facts don't care about your feelings. This isn't about, you don't elect a president because you get good feels off of them. And like I've said on this show before many times over the years, I voted for Trump because he was the GSD president. GSD, the Get Shit Done president. I didn't vote for him because he gave me the best warm feelies in the room. The only warm feelies I get off of Trump is that I see him trying to do something better for the country. Not because I think he's, I would trust him with my children. Let's put it that way. I would trust him as a man. I don't always like his style, that's all. And but I didn't vote for him for style. I voted for him for his ability to do things. The GSD president, to get shit done. And this is where there was a lot of controversy in the debate last night. And by the way, and we'll get to this in a few minutes because I'm going to cut away to something else for a minute here. This was just supposed to be by way of a few words to introduce this topic. Last night, at one or two spots where a real debate between the two candidates was taking place, the moderators cut it off. And I was going to grab a clip, but I didn't get a clip downloaded for this in enough time. You all saw it. JD Vance's response to the fact checking, which wasn't supposed to take place last night. CBS said we will not do any fact checking, though the candidates can fact check each other. But they fact checked him 3 distinct times. And one of those times he said, you know what? He says, no, that's not correct. We'll talk about that in a minute. Scotty, my love for you is nowhere near the love Diddy has for Bieber. Yeah, that's very true, Grumpy Stack. Thank goodness for that. So, welcome, Grumpy. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Who else wandered in here while I was yammering away? I don't know if anybody else is new, but there's a lot of new numbers. So, again, if you want to join the chat room over here with people who want to talk about this stuff and be open about it and have good conversation with you, come on over to the chat room. I posted it over in the over on my Instagram, and it's everywhere. Sam Hart has joined. Good to see you, Sam Hart, over there on Instagram. Nice to have you here. I'm glad you're here. I think you're still there. So welcome. Let's see. Let's get into this. Before I was supposed to do kind of my little ice breaking things at the beginning of the show. You know, affirmators, Shakespearean quotes, matchstick courage, things like that. And I tend to not do as many of those as I used to, but let's do this now. Matchstick courage. This is called Spark Courage, 50 Ways to Be Bold. And it's a faux matchbook or matchbox. And it's got these fake matchsticks in them. If you're a regular listener to the show, you've seen me do these before. And each one of those matchsticks is written something that is a way to be bold. It's stuff for us to figure out, think about, cogitate on. And so I like to go through here and randomly draw. I think I've probably gone through all of these over the years, but let's take a look at this. And I found this at a garage sale with Rainey a few years ago was when I picked it up, and for like a quarter. And this is the greatest thing. And I like to go extemporaneous with these. I like to just say, hey, let's draw one and let's see if we can talk about it a little bit. I need my glasses to read this because of my eyes. And let's see what this one says. Say yes to something you'd normally decline. Now remember, these matchsticks they're supposed to be ways to show your boldness and to be bold. Now I was to hold that up. You can see, say yes to something you'd normally decline. Think about that for a second. What are things you usually say no to that maybe you should think about it and say, maybe it's good to try to say yes to that now. One might be, look at the things that give you boldness, that help you to increase your confidence. Things like speaking. Most of you here aren't afraid to speak. But if I said, hey, Jeremy Hansen, you're so shy, you're so afraid to speak up, why don't you give me your thoughts on this? And you'd stammer and try to work your way up to the chalkboard or whatever in the classroom. And so sometimes the way to build boldness is just to say, yeah, okay, I'll give that a try. Something I have done in my business life. I'm no highly successful businessman. I don't make millions of dollars. But something I've tried over the years, from as far back as thinking into the mid 1980s, when I was doing work on my own as a freelancer, I would say yes to things. A good example of this also is my daughters. I'll start with an example of them. They were going to college. They were both in college. I think Abby was taking library arts, and I can't remember what Bryn was taking, but they were doing costumes on the side for people at the Renaissance Festival. And they would make costumes, and that's how they would make some of their cash. And somebody came to the director. I've talked about him before, Carr Hagerman, my friend at the festival, who we've talked about before, with the false accusations that were leveled against him, that he won, by the way, in court. But he went to them and asked, do you guys do mermaid tails? Can you make mermaid tails? And this was 14 years ago, maybe 14 to 15 years ago. And Abby was the one he was talking to, and Abby said, sure, we can do mermaid tails. He says, well, work up some prices for me. She went back home and she told Bryn, Carr just asked me if we can make mermaid tails. And Bryn's like, what'd you tell him? She said, I told him yes. And Bryn said, we don't know how to make mermaid tails. And Abby said, what a perfect opportunity for us to move forward. And they did. And where are they 14 to 15 years later? Highly successful, still making mermaid tails. Big company of their own, not big in the sense that they've got a dozen employees, but they're doing really well. I've bragged about them enough, so you know. That was 1492. What happened in 1492? Field guy? I'll go to college when Grumpy pays me the ad revenue. Grumpy said, 1980s, oh my God. That was like when Lincoln was assassinated, right? Yeah, right around there. I just put up a post today on my Facebook, my high school senior picture that was taken the summer before we graduated, because you get your senior pictures taken, then you do your senior year to graduate the next spring. And I was 16 years old, and I'm wearing a suit and tie, and in that, and then I put up the picture I took of myself on the camera here a week ago with my suit and tie, and I said, "Look at the difference. Almost 50 years makes." That was 77, and we're just going to start entering 2025 in a couple of months. But in 2024 to 07, what is it? That's 47 years ago. 47 years. Somebody said, "Ooh, you've changed." I said, "Hugely." No more change than 50 years takes, though. 5 decades. But so my daughters, they went ahead and they did this. 14 years ago, they built a great company out of it, and they're still doing it. I would go, I remember in the 80s, it was probably 1985, because I remember where we were living at the time, and where my desk was set up. And I was trying to get work from architects to do you've seen them, the 3-point illustrations of new buildings with the tree, put in the trees and the cars and the people and the clouds in the background to show what this new house or new building is going to look like. And I went into an office, and they said, "Well, look, we don't need any illustrations right now, but we do need a good model builder. Do you know how to build models, architectural models?" And I said, "Why, yes, I do." And I walked out of there with some blueprints under my arm and instructions, and I slapped my forehead and say, "What are you doing? You don't even know the first thing about building an architectural model." So back to this matchstick. What it's saying is sometimes you got to say yes to the things you would normally say no to, because that will expand who you are. It will expand your horizons. It will expand your capabilities. And if nothing else, it will expand you by saying, "Oh, I tried that and I couldn't do it. I did not succeed at that." And it's a stepping stone to move you on to something else. So let me encourage you, as do the matchsticks. Oh God, I almost feel like a gypsy. Oh, the matchsticks say that you will be expanding your courage. Oh, there is love in your life. Whatever. So, matchstick courage. What do? The things you would normally turn down or say no to, but you give them a try. Say yes. You're not getting any younger, so why not give it a try now? There's my encouragement for the day, from the matchsticks. And let's now break away from that and move toward last night's vice presidential debate. Now, normally, and this was talked about ahead of time, I talked about it, but yeah, Sam looks like my twin back then. He does. Grumpy Stack, you're right. So, hey, Kendall Blanchard, good to see you. I just noticed that you were there. Kalina is here. So if I missed anybody, it's not for any other reason that I haven't seen you yet. So tonight, we're talking about the vice presidential debate, a little feedback, a little review, my own personal review on things. It's not going to be word for word, sentence for sentence, question for question. It's going to be my take on what happened last night. Normally, you look at a vice presidential debate and you go, I got better things to do tonight. And I got to wash my hair or whatever. Not me, because I don't have much left. But you know what I'm talking about. And vice presidential debates don't usually rank very high on people's lists for the things that they want to take their time spending watching for an hour and a half. Well, last night they had 43 million viewers last night. And there were a lot of big questions that were being asked prior to this. And I've got some stuff up here that I wanted to to talk about. I got so many pages open here and windows open. I want to start by talking about why the vice presidential debate last night was not at all what voters expected. And I want to start that by saying, first of all, and you could say this is my bias, but even last night, as Rainey and I were watching this together, we were talking about this. I said, look, I think Tim Walz did a good job. Now, without content, you start digging into the content of the things he said. Here's the problem. When you're not wanting to be biased, is that you listen to the things he said and you go, oh, that's not true. Or no, that's not how that happened. No, that's not what that meant. He even invoked the 2025 project again. And it's like, that's one of those lies that the Democrats keep bringing up. Why do they keep bringing those up? Because it matters only in the sense that they are speaking to people who don't do any looking. They don't think, they don't ask critical questions. Unleash Jeremy Hansen. I'm getting to that. I agree with you. Jeremy Hansen says, I thought Vance cooked him. He did. On many different fronts. Now, Walz, to me, came across last night as I was listening to him. First thing I took away from Walz was he was 10 times more substantive than I've ever seen Kamala Harris. He spoke substance last night, but the problem is that his substance is hinging on whether or not you believe what I think even he has swallowed. However, you look at all the things he's been caught in as lies, or as he called himself a knucklehead last night, referring to the fact that he said he was at Tiananmen Square for the confrontation of the one man against the tank in Tiananmen Square, but he wasn't. He didn't go to China till 2-3 months later. And last night when he was confronted on that, he was kind of like, well, he didn't really answer the question. He started the question almost the way Kamala Harris would answer it. Well, what do you think about inflation, Ms. Harris, Madam Vice President? Well, I was born in a middle-class town and blah, 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 blah. What did Walz do last night? Can you talk to us about, there seems to be a discrepancy on when you went to China and you weren't there, they say. Well, he says, I'm a Nebraska kid. I grew up in Nebraska, small town. He went out for 2 minutes, not answering the question at all. And then finally, they actually followed up and pressed him a little bit, the moderators. And he said, well, I'm just a knucklehead. It is what it is. And so now Vance had a moment similar to that. However, there's a difference. When Tim Walz asked him, well, what about, do you believe that Trump won the election in 2020? Do you believe the election was stolen? And Vance didn't, he says, look, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the future. And Walz said, well, why won't you answer that question? Well, maybe some people would look at that and say he was trying to avoid answering that question. I think it's because that's not what he wanted to focus on. What did Ronald Reagan say once? Ronald Reagan said about debates, and any of you remember Ronald Reagan like I do? First president I could vote for, probably one of the best presidents we've ever had in recent history. Ronald Reagan said, when you are in a debate, you don't answer the question posed. You answer by telling people what they need to hear, the truth, the facts, what you want to get across. You don't answer their question. So that was, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I still haven't seen Reagan yet. I want to go see that movie. I may not get to see it before it comes out of the theaters. Trying to pin my wife's feet down so we can go on a date and go see a movie is ridiculous these days. There's so much going on. But I want to go see that. I want to see Dennis Quaid playing Ronald Reagan. I've heard it's a fantastic movie. Well, anyways, this is what Vance did last night. He's saying, look, you want to drive me to answer that question so you can use that against me. I'm not going to answer that question that way. I'm going to tell you my answer this way. Now, that's different than asking Walls about whether he lied about going to China, being in China at Tiananmen Square. It's a totally different thing. They're asking Vance to state his opinion on January 6th. And you know what's interesting? The one place where Vance came back at the moderators, very professionally, by the way, about fact checking him and tried to answer, and they ended up cutting off his mic. They said, well, we have a lot more important things to go on to from here. So you got to be done. And what's the next question I asked him about? Global warming, climate change. That's more important than having JD Vance address the thing you supposedly fact checked him on. And he's fact checking you with cogent answers. And then they cut off his mic. So that's unforgivable, really, from journalists. Journalists are supposed to. They said that they would not at CBS fact check either candidate. That the candidates, however, can fact check each other. So when Vance starts doing that, oh, he's fact checking them on their fact checking. Well, they can't have that. Makes them look bad. It reveals to everybody watching their bias. Couldn't have that. So they moved it on from there. Let's see. CBS News had on the bottom of the screen to see our fact check. Hit the QR code and see the debate rules. Hit QR code. Well, guess what I did? Go there, and they broke half of their own rules. You're absolutely right. That was Field Guy in the chat room. I was a damn fool. First time I was able to vote was Bush Jr. I wish I could have voted for Pee Wee Herman. Well, there you go. I think a lot of people do. Yeah, Susie Q, you're right. Once again, the moderators had their own agenda. So one thing I have to say is that, and I'm not a big one for calling out, well, J.D. Vance won the debate last night, or Tim Walz won the debate last night. We look at that stuff sometimes, and it's generally down party lines. So I hate saying that, but I would say from a professional and a technical appraisal of how the debate went last night, that J.D. Vance won the debate. He was factual. He was polite. He was gentlemanly. He kept his cool. You never saw him get rattled. On the other side, you had Tim Walz, who was very nervous from the beginning. I've got an article up here on somebody who did some body language on the debate last night. And if we may get into that yet. But let me go here. All right. I'm going to go to, and I'm sorry, my eyes are just so wonky these days since this surgery that sometimes I need my glasses, sometimes I don't, and I got to look through my bifocal. So why do you think the debate was not what voters expected? So here's a couple of things. There were two slightly different candidates than expected showed up at the debate last night. As the debate opened, Vance took the stage as an historically unpopular vice presidential candidate. What have we heard about J.D. Vance since Trump announced him? People didn't like him. They didn't have any good reasons for disliking him. They didn't like him. Even I was questioning J.D. Vance. I thought, Trump, couldn't you have gotten somebody better? Like, I don't know, like a Tulsi Gabbard or somebody. Trump must have made a good business decision, which he normally does. He's a businessman. So although the immediate flash polls on CNN and CBS show that both of these candidates helped themselves, Vance improved his image, and Walz didn't help himself as much as he could have. And by the way, this is some things put together by the Brookings Institute. So, to the surprise of many Americans, the vice presidential debate was civil, it was substantive, it was focused on policy issues that people care about the most. The candidates refrained from going into personal attacks of each other, and they even found surprising areas of agreement. And citizens interviewed right after the debate ended they expressed their appreciation for a debate that wasn't painful to watch and actually stuck to major issues. And do you saw how many times JD Vance looked at Walz and he says, I don't disagree with you on that. And even Walz started doing that. Well, I agree with almost everything you just said there, but I've got a different take on this. Now, this wasn't only a surprise to most people, but when the two candidates for vice president come out on stage last night, America had these certain expectations that were based on the campaign so far. And neither candidate lived up to the expectations, which was good news for the Republican nominee, Vance. And not so good news for the Democratic nominee, Governor Tim Walz. So in the weeks before the debate, Vance had become known for two things, both of them fitting firmly into Walz's characterization of Trump Republicans as being weird. On July 22nd, a clip of Vance's interview on Fox News from 2021 was posted. In it, Vance attacks women who do not have children, suggesting that the childless cat ladies, as they've come to be known, do not have the same stake in America as do people who are parents. That was his point. I don't think childless cat ladies using a, what would you call it? A jab. Childless cat ladies. I don't think he cared about a woman being childless or not having cats. But he says basically people who don't have kids and live with their cats are probably people that don't have as big a stake in the United States as people with children that are bringing them up into the next generation. And in her endorsement of Kamala Harris, T-shirts were printed and memes were proliferated by Taylor Swift regarding that. And as if the cat lady stories weren't trouble enough, Vance followed this up by defending unsubstantiated claims from Springfield, Ohio, that Haitian immigrants were stealing and eating their neighbors' cats and dogs. Now, by the way, if you want to go along with what Taylor Swift says about endorsing Kamala Harris, just remember, as the meme said, 90% of her songs have to do with making wrong choices. What's that tell you about her choice to support Kamala Harris? Maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, but there it is. Now, in contrast, Walz spent the weeks before the debate doing what most VP candidates are supposed to do. No harm. They didn't put him out front. They didn't put him into any interviews, except the one he had with Kamala. And a little good, too, because following up on the Midwest dad, football coach demeanor that he so skillfully deployed as the Democratic convention, Walz cut what will surely go down in history as one of the best political commercials ever. The ad features him telling the viewers how to fix the cruise control on his 1979 International Harvester Scout, interspersed with comments on Harris's opportunity economy. It was widely shared on social media with nearly 1 million posts so far. And by the way, in that ad, he was taking out an air filter to show you how to, in the background, he was changing his air filter. Well, let me put the same one back in, if you didn't notice that. So as the debate opened last night, Vance took the stage as an historically unpopular vice presidential candidate. And soon after his convention, his unfavorable ratings were 29.3%. By the time of the debate, they'd risen to 45.5%. Unfavorable. In contrast, Walz's unfavorable ratings on the eve of the debate were 36%. a 9.5% better rating than Vance. But slightly different candidates than expected by the general public, by the parties, by the media, showed up on the stage in New York last night. Vance wasn't all that weird. He didn't mention cat ladies or Haitian immigrants eating pets. His demeanor and his calm recitation of his positions did him a hell of a lot of good last night. There was plenty to disagree with, and there were times when he pushed the truth, but his efforts to sound more moderate probably made some of the far-right supporters angry. But it was all delivered as smoothly as you would expect by a polished debater and a Yale Law School grad. But if Weird Vance didn't show up, neither did Genial Walls. He was clearly nervous. He talked too fast, rarely smiled, and his sense of humor didn't come through at all. So here, too, the expectations were not met. Had the walls of the debate been the walls of the Harvester commercial, the debate might have been a smooth-talking lawyer versus the common sense man in perception. Although the immediate flashpoints on CNN, CBS showed that both candidates helped themselves. Vance improved his image. Walls didn't help himself as much as he could have. And substantively, Vance did a much better job than Walls in three important ways. He was on the attack on what he called the Harris-Biden administration, not the Biden-Harris, the Harris-Biden administration. He offered an articulate defense of his presidential candidate's record in office, and he consistently brought the questions back to the economy and immigration, the two principal issues on which Trump enjoys an advantage over Harris. So in contrast, Walz's response to each question were less clear, which probably made it harder for viewers to frame an easily remembered impression. Well, it's because he wasn't very practiced, and I think because he didn't know what he was supposed to say there. Did he go outside the playbook? Trying to answer things? I don't know. So on specific issues, both candidates had areas of strength. Vance excelled on immigration, the economy, foreign policy, and he managed to sound reasonable on abortion, which is the left's big thing. The left doesn't want you to focus on the economy of Harris-Biden of the last 4 years. They don't want you to focus on the foreign policy. They don't want you to focus on immigration because all of those are absolutely fucking abysmal. What they want you to focus on is a woman's right to whether or not she can say she can have an abortion that's ruled on and held up by federal law instead of state law. Walz said last night, by the way, that he thought Roe v. Wade should be reopened. Wait, was that him? Or somebody else I heard commenting on Walz? Anyway. But Walz was strong on gun safety, housing, and healthcare. And he may have had his strongest moment at the end of the debate when the discussion turned to the January 6th and preserving democracy. Whatever his private views may be, Vance would not admit that Joe Biden won the 2020 election, which attracted lots of post-debate attention and may have dented the armor of reasonableness and common sense that he wore to the debate, according to people on the left. And so in the past, vice presidential debates have had this little measurable impact on the presidential choice. Now, this time, it could be really different. I think people were watching this last night because the vice presidential debates this time around, I think people are much more invested in it because of the tone of the election and who's running, what's going to happen, the division in the country, etc. So presidential debate, this is the first vice presidential debate, which may not be followed by a presidential debate. Won't be. Pretty sure. Unless they come back and do something different. So it's the last formal exchange between the candidates of the two parties. that the public is likely to hear, and they may give more staying power than in the past. And because the 2024 election is balanced on a knife's edge, even a small shift could affect the outcome. And I am really curious, do you believe the election is as tight as what we're being told? There's a good question. But the debate may have been the most consequential for the future of the Republican Party. If Trump loses the election, Vance's performance is going to strengthen his credentials as the next generation leader of the MAGA movement. And if Trump wins, Vance's standing as the heir apparent will be even stronger. In just 90 minutes, Vance transformed himself from an object of ridicule into a man with a family, a wife, and a bright future. And that's what I took away from the debate last night. These candidates were not what people expected them to be during this debate last night. So I'm looking here. Field Guy says exactly. Susie Q, you said no. I'm not sure what that was toward. It was to me or one of these other guys talking in the chat room. Elvis, welcome. Good to see you. Pardon me for looking down my nose at you. I'm just looking through my bifocals. Got to hold them like this otherwise. So, by the way, a good place to interject a thought here is I want you all to consider casting an early ballot whenever your state opens it up. The most problems we had, if you believe there was any tomfoolery or fishy business or fraud that took place in the last election, it took place on voting day. Now, conservatives had generally always come out on voting day. And they've kind of eschewed the mail-in voting. Now, both Rainey and I Rainey got hers already in the mail. We both sent away for our absentee ballots, or vote by mail ballots. And the idea with this is that these are cast long before Election Day. The tampering usually took place, they believe, during the election night. And so vote a little early, and it might be much better for the outcome that you want. So that's my take on that. Now I got a whole bunch of other stuff here. Let's see where I want to go next with this, because I think that there's some stuff that we do need to talk about. Here, I got this. These are some takes on what happened last night by personalities in the news. Granted, there's a lot of these are Fox News people. I saw this article and I grabbed it. Fox News top talent react to the CBS News vice presidential debate. I hear people all the time go, "Oh, that's Fox News, Fox faux news," they call it. Obviously, you get all your information from Fox News. And I'm like, well, how do you know I get all my information from Fox News? You don't. I like Fox News. I think Fox News is pretty accurate. But you're not going to think that if you're on the left. So, because they don't like Fox News. Now, Shannon Bream, Kelly McEnany, she was the former press secretary for Donald Trump. Trace Gallagher, Joe Concha, other top Fox News talent, delivered some real-time analysis of the vice presidential debate that went on last night. And here are some Twitters, or X's, I guess you can call them now, that were picked up. Fela, who is Fela, is a comedian who does a political show on Fox, and he said Vance was sharp AF, sharp as fuck. Walz will be remembered for saying he's friends with school shooters. It was a slip of the tongue, I'm sure. Gutfeld slams Walz's response to questions about his misinterpretation of the trip to China. I've been a knucklehead at times. Is that how you admit to lying? That's kind of hilarious. one of the ones I see, Brian Kilmeade, author of books. He's got his own show, his own radio show. He said Walz did fine, but J.D. Vance was sensational, relaxed, and relatable. Way too much time on January 6th at the debates was spent. I wish we could have talked about what they led fiery inflation and an inflamed Middle East and the new Axis powers. Kayleigh McEnany praises Trump for masterful VP pick. She said J.D. Vance was very clearly a masterful pick for vice president. His heartfelt response to questions and kind demeanor was very powerful. Really excellent judgment by Donald Trump and all those instrumental to the pick. Will Cain said Walz was fine on performance, but argues that Vance was completely dominant. Will Cain said Walz was fine on performance, excepting his awful China moment. Terrible on substance, from his own abortion bills to free speech. Vance, though, was completely dominant. The moderators were an embarrassment again. And that's the truth. I wish I had downloaded that clip. You remember what happened. They fact-checked him after talking about Walz and he were exchanging on the situation of Ohio and the presence of immigrants there, the overabundance of them, 20,000 in Springfield. And they didn't bring up the cat comment, though, cat and dog comment. But they fact-checked him after he was done with his answer. They fact-checked him by saying there were these immigrants and there was, this and that, and they were legal and this and that. And now let's move on. And J.D. Vance said, well, wait, I would like to say something about that. If you saw it, look it up if you haven't seen it, because I don't have the clip here. But he said, wait, he says, I would like to say something about that. And they said, well, we don't have any more time on this question. We have to move on. And they started reading the next question, just absolutely talking over him. And he kept talking. He said, now wait, he says, your rules said that you will not fact check. Now, since you just fact checked me, he says, I would like to respond to that. And by that point, they finally stopped trying to talk over him and he continued on. He wasn't angry. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, he says, your rules said you weren't going to fact check. And since you fact checked me, I would like to respond to that. And he gave a response and gave a technical response on the immigration status of people there. And remember, J.D. Vance is a senator in Ohio. This is his state. He's very in tune with this. And so Walz then came in and said, well, we've had apps since 1990 that do this. And Vance started to say, we didn't have apps in 1990. And they cut him off. They cut off his microphone. And they said, as you can see, your mics are off. We're going to move on because we have other important questions. Their very next question was to talk about climate change. Tell me that's more important than talking about what most people are concerned about right now, and that's immigration and the border. Now, you all know who Tyrus is on Fox. He's the big former champion wrestler. He said, nice guys finish last. And there were moments for a kill shot in this debate, and J.D. Vance led up. That was his take. He says Vance didn't take the kill shot. Brian Brenberg said, first half, Vance mopped the floor with Walz. Second half, moderators made it a debate on who would make government bigger. Walz was forgettable. Vance missed the chance to defend liberty. Closing argument, Kamala's day number one was 1,400 days ago. And that's what Vance said. And he made that point several times. She's been there for 4 years. Will Kane said he blessed the MSNBC's debate analysis. In case you're curious, he said, the moderators were excellent, and Vance was smoothly horrific, and Walz knocked Vance out at the end, according to MSNBC, that is. Seriously, that's what MSNBC said. The moderators were excellent, Vance was smoothly horrific, and Walz knocked Vance out at the end. That's MSNBC for you. Concha warns Republicans not to go on CBS's Face the Nation following the performance from debate moderator. No Republican, he said, should ever go on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan ever again. Why is that, do you suppose? It's because of the fact checking. It's because of them obviously supporting one side. Gutfeld calls out Chuck Todd over the debate analysis. Chuck Todd says reporters deserve credit for Vance winning the debate by asking Vance tough questions that gave him the experience of answering tough questions. That's amazing. Now, McEnany, one of the biggest indictments of Kamala Harris' judgment was her choosing Walz over Shapiro of Pennsylvania. One of the biggest indictments on the judgment of Kamala Harris is choosing Walz over the highly popular governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Why? As CNN said, the bigger hurdle for Shapiro was his face-to-face meeting with Harris, where he posed very specific questions about the role of a vice president, including what decisions he would be included in making should they win the election. She ended up not choosing him. He'd probably be much more formidable than Tim Walz. Juan Williams, who was the resident liberal at Fox, used to be. I don't think he's either retired or he's doing something else. He said Fox News Channel's political analyst, he is still a political analyst, Juan Williams said Vance was getting pummeled on January 6th during the CBS News VP debate. Can't say Trump lost with non-answers, Williams said. Vance must worry Trump will say he's too soft and agreeable with Walz. But January 6th answer sent him sailing into Trump mania. So says Juan Williams. Will Kane said Walz was fine on performance, accepting his awful China moment. Terrible on substance, from his own abortion bills to free speech. Vance was completely dominant. The moderators were again an embarrassment. Joe Concha said Walz on his closing statement, Kamala Harris will bring a new way forward, the politics of joy. Hang it on a wall. There you go. The politics of joy. Now, politics aren't about joy, by the way. Levin said, Mark Levine, CBS O'Donnell and Brennan are Democrat apparatchiks. I don't even know what he's talking. I don't even know what that word is. He says, unbelievable, pushing the left agenda. January 6th receives more time than anything. Trump offered the National Guard and Pelosi said no. Why Republicans continue to agree to debates with these Democrat apparatchiks, it looks like A-P-P-A-R-A-T, chicks, C-H-I-K-S, apparatchiks. I'm not even sure what that is. As pretend, well, these Democrat pretend moderators is unbelievable, he said. He went on to say that Tim Walz is worried about democracy. There's no democracy with mobocracy. He let Minneapolis burn and held back the National Guard. That's truth from Mark Levine. We may have hit this one already. Brian Kilmeade said Walz did fine, but Vance was a sensational, relaxed and was a sensation, relaxed and relatable. Way too much time spent on January 6th. Wish we could have talked about what led fiery inflation and an inflamed Middle East and new Axis powers. Joe Conscious said, not one question from the CBS moderators on Biden's health. Coincidence? Again, just like on ABC last month, not one question from the CBS moderators on Biden's health. And why is he still in office? Coincidence? Or did the Harris-Walz campaign demand the question not be broached? And CBS just agreed to go along with that. What do you guys think on that? If Joe Biden is as ineffectual as he's coming across right now, why is he still there? Why haven't they led a 25th Amendment? Just let's use that as a noun. A 25th Amendment on Joe Biden. I have a theory on that, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not. I think it's because they don't want Kamala Harris to be in office or to say that she would be in office before they hope she gets elected. They don't want her anywhere near making those decisions before things happen. What do you think about the war in Israel and Iran? I said last night after watching the bombing taking place in Iran, I said, we're going to war. We're going to war. We're already in kind of a Cold War. We've already got 30,000 troops stationed over there. When, by the way, Kamala Harris in her presidential debate said we don't have one service member stationed in a foreign war zone. I'm sorry. Yes, we do. We got 30,000 of them in the Middle East right now. Oh, a member of, okay. Aparachik, he says, Kalina, is a member of the communist apparat. Okay. Makes sense now. So, Israel, do you think we're going to be going to war over there? American soldiers? Think we're going to be fighting a land war in Iran? I think Israel needs to go. We need to keep our nose out of what Israel does. We need to support them as our ally. And Israel needs to go kick the shit out of Iran. First thing they need to do is take out their nuclear capabilities and their weapons. And they can do it. They know where they are. Be interesting, huh? I've got even more on this. It's 10 o'clock right now. Let's take just a mini break. We're not done yet. So I'm going to throw up an ad, give you 1 minute exactly to go take care of any business you got to take care of. I'm going to throw up an ad and we're going to come right back. So everybody, you sit tight. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hi, my dad. He can take me to Disneyland.
All right, welcome back. Let's get on with this just a little bit more, and we'll open it up to your calls if anybody wants to come in and talk about this, because there's so much to talk about here. Let's see. And again, I apologize that my eyes are just so bad right now. Captain of the ship, Vance oozed all kinds of confidence compared to a jittery Walz. Now, this is the body language expert that talked about this. And she talked about how, here, I'm going to go through some of the points that were made on this. And I got to blow this up so I can read it a little better without struggling with my bifocals. So Vance and Walz clashed, of course, last night. Good-spirited vice presidential. We got to give it that. It was good-spirited. With commenters saying the GOP candidate came out on top. But body language experts, this debate last night, between Vance and Walz, brought together two candidates with different visions for the future. Their body language also sharply contrasted with one another, as Vance espoused a sense of calmness and a command of the issues. But Walz kind of appeared nervous and overly fidgety at times, although he did manage to find his stride later in the debate. Body language expert Carol Lieberman, MD, tells Fox News Digital what J.D. Vance had that made him most likable and most trusted was that he was authentic. You could just say it in one word. And J.D. Vance was authentic. He did big hand movements and so on, but they were just to explain what he was saying. Vance came across as being very steady, like you can kind of see him as a captain of a ship, and he wasn't too stiff, but you knew that you knew what you're going to get. Each time he seemed sure of himself, and so you felt like you would be safe with him. He gave an air of stability, Lieberman added to this. That ran counter to Walz, whom Lieberman said was anxious and jittery, particularly at the beginning of the debate. With Tim Walz, he was all over the place. He was very nervous, and he also had body language signs of lying. His body language was discordant with what he was saying. It was like too much. It made you feel exhausted and scared. Lieberman said Walz fumbled his question about being in Tiananmen Square for the deadly protests in the spring of 1989. Walz previously said he'd been in Hong Kong during the protests, but Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets report that Walz actually didn't travel to China until August of that year. CBS News moderator Margaret Brennan asked Walz to explain the discrepancy. Walz initially tried to talk around the question, but eventually admitted he misspoke after calling himself a knucklehead at times. He was so defensive, he was just talking in circles and didn't want to admit that he had lied. If he had said that at the very beginning, it would have been more honest, said Lieberman. Now, how would you handle something like that? If somebody caught you in a lie, even if it was just a knucklehead lie? I was listening to him last night and watching him go circles and circles. I thought, oh my God, he's not going to recover from this question. Just answer it, Walz, I kept saying to the TV. If he'd have come out and said, how would you have felt about Walz if he said, at the time I said that, I wasn't being honest. I tried to make it look more like I was more involved and more whatever his excuse might be. But if he'd have come out and admitted it, would he have done any better, do you think? That's an interesting question. So ABC's Lindsay Davis, by the way, admits fact-checking of Trump was because CNN let his statements hang at the first debate. That's the presidential debate. Now, Lieberman says that body language last night plays an important role in debates, as people may not give their full attention to the entire debate, and some topics interest people more than others. Remember, you may not remember this, some of us do. Remember Nixon wiping sweat off his upper lip during a televised debate with Kennedy. I don't remember that. I was only 2 years old. But she said 40-year-old Vance came across as the more experienced politician, even though he's only served in the Senate since January of 2023. whereas Walz served in Congress from 2007 to 2019 before going on to be governor of Minnesota twice now. Now, Walz seemed like he was just the new politician, like he was just trying to figure these things out. He was always looking down, and it's okay to take notes when you're talking, but he was frantically taking notes like, oh man, I better say that, and this is the answer to that. It really didn't seem to help him much. But I think it was a nervous compensation, said Lieberman. Whereas with J.D. Vance, you could see the Yale debater, she asserted. He obviously has had years and years of practice debating in college and as a lawyer and so on. You read about or heard about both of them practicing, but if it's coming from an authentic place, you don't really have to practice that much. You know what you want to do, and you just say it. Whereas if you're hiding things by squirreling around, then you do have to practice to make sure you don't say that, or you don't do, or you do say that. And that's kind of how it came across last night. The CBS News vice presidential debate showcased the two candidates' platforms on issues such as ongoing war raging in the Middle East, heating up in the Middle East, abortion laws, their respective tickets, economic records. During the 90-minute debate, Vance and Walz had a handful of clashes, including moderators turning off Vance's microphone, as we talked about. When Vance said, look, you weren't supposed to fact check by your own rules, but since you did, I want to answer that. Commentators on both sides of the political spectrum largely agreed that Vance won the debate with a more polished performance in what was a highly policy-driven event devoid of personal attacks. The pair were seen shaking hands and chatting immediately after the debate. Vance went over to Walz, smiling, shook his hand, and they stood there laughing and talking a little bit. Lieberman said Vance was confident in prosecuting the case for the Trump ticket and was comfortable arguing the issues the Republican Party stands for. He wanted to, let's go. I can't wait to do this. I'm going to do it. He's Trump-light, she said. It's kind of the authenticity that I want to take care of America. I want to make America great again. All of that just came through naturally. And by the end, you just kind of wanted him to push Tim Walz away. You're making me nervous kind of thing. And with J.D. Vance, you just kind of felt, okay, that's good. And by the way, I've heard it said, even on the right, and I've said it, J.D. Vance was better last night than Trump was. I wish we'd have seen Trump in his debate as good as Vance was last night. Not that Trump was wrong. Trump is just not a good debater. He knows what he believes, and he hammers that home. Lieberman said it appeared that Walz's strategy was to blame former President Trump, in large part, for many of the issues or cite Trump when responding to answers. And when that line of response became ineffective, he appeared a little bit lost. So what do you think? Walz was nervous in parts, she goes on. And then he had some signs of lying, like, for example, fidgeting while talking. Mainly his movements were discordant with what he was saying. These puppy dog looks at Vance did him in my opinion. He was practicing what to say bad about Trump, and that wasn't a good plan. Lieberman said Walz also had some brain freeze moments. You could call it a senior moment. He would stare and you were wondering, is he going to go on? Is there more? And that was very sort of worrying, she said. By the way, my wife even last night was surprised to learn that Walz is younger than me. Walz is almost 4 years younger than I am. She thought, what? I thought he was a lot older. That came when she made some statement. She said, wow, I guess that's par for the course for somebody as old as Walz. He's pushing like by Biden, is he? And I said, no, he's younger than me. And she said, no. There you go. So throughout the 90 minutes, you would find yourself getting more and more nervous and anxious, irritated by Tim Walz, whereas you were beginning to feel calmer and as though things were going to be okay with JD Vance. And even if you couldn't hear the words that they were speaking and you were just watching them, this is how you would feel. So there you go. That is body language specialist take on last night's debate. And by the way, I've only gone through about 1/3 of the things I have up here to talk about. Let's see. What do we got here? Takeaways from the debate. Let's look at this for just a second. This won't take long. Muted mics and politeness, and 6 takeaways from the VP debate last night. Despite some heated moments and at least one muted microphone, it was perhaps the most civil debate of the 2024 election campaign. There were even points of common ground between the two men. There was one point where JD Vance said, you know, if you end up winning and you become the vice president, he says, I'd be more than willing to help out any way I can. So, meaning he'd lend him some advice and help him out in the Senate and so on. But here are some of the most memorable parts of the first and only debate that's probably going to happen between the running mates of Harris and Trump. Abortion rights. This was a top issue in 2024 in the 2024 election, and it sparked one of the longest and most heated exchanges of the night. It's an issue that Democrats have used to galvanize voters, regularly framing Trump as a threat to women's autonomy because of his role in appointing a conservative majority to the Supreme Court. Well, wouldn't they have appointed a liberal majority to the Supreme Court if the tables were turned? The Democrats are just mad because they aren't the ones that were there able to do it. Now, the court later overturned Roe v. Wade, the ruling that had protected abortion rights in the U.S. for decades. Now, Walz cited the stories of Amber Thurman. You know what I've really come to hate is in campaign speeches or debates. It's like the story of little Tommy Lewis and his blah, 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 blah. I hate those. I hate them from either side. Don't tell me that crap. I just want to hear your policies. But he brought up Thurman, Candy Miller, 2 women from Georgia whose deaths were connected to abortion restrictions in their home state. Vance, meanwhile, said his opinion on the issue had changed. He previously supported some type of national restrictions on abortion, but said that his position shifted when he saw the majority of Ohio voters supported access to abortion. He also said his party had to do so much better at earning the American people's trust back on this issue, where they frankly just don't trust us anymore. That's what Vance said. Number 2, Vance has no answer to the Trump 2020 defeat. Walz had his best moment of the night near the end of the debate when the focus shifted to the 6th of January riot and the election denialism. In an intense exchange, Vance refused to say that Trump had lost the 2020 election, prompting some disbelief from Walz, who called it a damning non-answer. And the moderators also raised Vance's previous comments that he would not have certified the 2020 election results if he had been vice president at the time. Vance maintained his support for Trump, saying the former president had asked demonstrators on the day of the Capitol riot to protest peacefully. He added that Walz would have had his best wishes if the Democrats win the election this year, but said there were legitimate questions to raise about voting fraud and security. Walz said that he and his opponent were miles apart on the issue of 6th of January and election integrity. And by that point in the debate, you're like, okay, you're miles apart on that issue. That's to be expected. Number 3 point to take home. Middle East tensions loom incredibly large right now. Walz and Vance took the stage just hours after Iran launched a missile attack on Israel, whose Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed retaliation, as he should. And the ongoing tensions in the Middle East formed the basis of the first question. Appearing nervous, Walz stumbled as he repeated Harris's promise of ironclad support for Israel. Vance, meanwhile, reiterated one of Trump's main talking points, that no new world conflicts broke out during the former president's time in office. Neither man would say if they approved of a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran. It's not preemptive at this point, folks. Iran just launched 1,000 missiles into Israel last night. If Israel retaliates, that's not preemptive. That's defensive. Number 4 point you can take away, mics were muted after a tussle over immigration. Immigration was a key topic throughout the 90-minute head-to-head. Vance, a Republican senator from Ohio, frequently returned to the issue of the U.S. southern border and immigration, viewed by many voters as a weakness for his opponents. Walz, the Democratic governor of Minnesota, countered that Trump helped torpedo bipartisan legislation that would have enacted some of the toughest immigration policy in U.S. history, which is a bunch of bull as in bull, shit as in shit. I have heard that argument from Harris. Well, we had the toughest bill. Biden said we had the toughest, and Trump just kept encouraging senators to vote against it, or House members to vote against it. Well, that's because it wasn't a good bill. A lot of other issues that were unanswered in that. Let's see. And of course the Harris-Biden administration says that this bill had, more money for more border patrol and to help them. And Border Patrol says we don't need anybody else. We don't need. What we need is for the laws to be upheld. We need to be able to turn them back at the border. So the discussion ultimately turned tense when Vance was asked about the false claims he made about Haitian migrants in Springfield. And Vance and Trump previously shared conspiracy theories that illegal immigrants were eating pets in the small city. That didn't come up last night. But when a CBS News moderator tried to correct Vance, the Ohio senator spoke over the hosts, who went on to mute his microphone. Isn't this what you want in a debate? Don't you want the candidates to articulate? And all Vance said was, you made the rule that you weren't going to fact check. Now you're fact checking, so I am going to respond to that. And he said it with his cool intact the whole time. Number 5, I'm a knucklehead at times, Walz admits. So just before the debate, a claim of Walz's collapsed under scrutiny, that he'd been in Hong Kong when the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre occurred in Beijing. I'm a knucklehead at times, Walz said when asked about it on Tuesday night. The Minnesota governor clarified that he had misspoken, saying he was influenced by the events because he had arrived in China that summer. And Vance also was asked to answer for some past comments, including prior attacks on his running mate, Trump, who he once referred to as America's Hitler. The Ohio senator said he, like many people, has made mistakes in the past. He says, I was wrong about Donald Trump, he said. He answered that clear cut. Very different kind of answer than what Walz gave on the China thing. Number 6, politeness took center stage last night. The tone was in stark contrast to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's first encounter last month, when insults flew and interruptions were frequent. Starting off the night with a handshake, both Vance and Walz proceeded to address each other politely and with civility. The two even exchanged smiles periodically, agreeing from time to time with what their rival had to say. They did direct some fire at the top of the ticket, however, Vance taking aim at Harris and Walz at Trump. So there you go. That's kind of some of the main takeaways from last night. So let's leave my talking there and let's open it up to you guys. If you guys got something you want to add to this and some things you'd like to say, I'm going to post this link again. Of course, you can call him anytime. I just can't guarantee that I'll always answer it because I'm talking. But let me get to the chat room here and paste that. There it is if you want to call in. There is that. If you're still over on the Instagram page, you can come on over anytime you want. I saw Sam Hart. I saw Hobbs Construction was in there. Big Working Dogs joined. That's my friend Carr. I know him very well. I don't know if any of you are still there, but if you would like to come in and share your thoughts, come on in. All right. So, should we take a break even? It's 10:24. Let's just go on. As I'm not gonna take a big break. Let's just talk. If you want to call in, talk. If nobody calls in a few minutes, we'll just we'll call it for the night. But what was your take on the debate? Did you watch the debate? If you did, why did you want to see it? If you didn't, why did you not want to see it? So come on over and give me your thoughts on this, and we'll go from there. So you've got the link, and you can come on in. I've got other stuff up in here I could bring up. I was going to bring up the female Bigfoot Navajo Ranger at a chilling night vision encounter. I didn't look into that enough. I've got that sitting off to the side. I can't really talk to it yet because I'd have to watch the video to see what she had to say. We can talk about Israel just a little bit. What's going on over there? Iran's attack against Israel and the devastations from Hurricane Helene, plus the possibility of the dock workers' strike. Those three things all happened in the last few days, and they risk injecting chaos in the presidential campaign's final month. I'm sorry. Vice presidential debates rarely matter much in presidential campaigns, and Tuesday's debate last night between Walz and Vance may matter less than ever, not because of what was said or not said, but because the events have suddenly interceded in ways that could affect the election in its closing weeks, much more than what happened on stage last night. You got to cut through some of the election noise. Iran's ballistic missile attack against Israel, which came just hours before Tuesday night's CBS debate, represented a dramatic and dangerous escalation of a Middle East conflict that's now raged on for nearly a year on top of thousands of years. Further escalation is likely as the Israelis prepare a response and as President Joe Biden, Vice President Harris weigh their opinions as they stand with Israel. Biden and Harris also were consumed with federal response to the deaths and destruction caused by Hurricane Helene, a storm that's killed at least 137 people, and I think there's still over 600 missing. It's left towns and communities in the South crippled as they deal with wrenching devastation. Some towns completely obliterated. The storm's widespread damage forced Harris to abandon the campaign trail, a fundraiser that she was at the other night, and return to the White House on Monday. Now, added to that, dock workers along the East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico went on strike. There's 36 U.S. ports are closed down because of this right now. They went on strike on Tuesday after efforts by Biden's administration failed to prevent the walkout. The strike brought immediate interruption to shipping and could threaten the economy if longshoremen stay out for an extended period. Biden and Harris will be under pressure to bring the strike to an early end, but they risk a rift with organized labor in the process. There is a law that says the president can step in and put an 80-day moratorium on the strike so they can hopefully go back to the table and negotiate. He can do that. Why don't they want to do that right now? Because they traditionally would not be for a moratorium on a strike. They would support the union workers. So, but most people want them to step in and stop this thing because it's better for the economy to stop it so they can work it out. But that the election falls within that 80-day window. So what do you think? Hey, Gabriel, welcome to the show. Buenos dias, he says. Saludo. I'm sure that's salutations. So even though I don't speak Spanish. So welcome to the show, Gabriel. Let's see. Tuesday's debate between Walz and Vance was perhaps the last major event on the political calendar before Election Day on November 5th, which is about 32 days away. Elections in 32 days, folks. If you're going to mail in your ballots, mail them in now. It was all overshadowed by these events. The debate was generally civil and certainly more substantive than last month's debate between Harris and Trump. I did say last night to Rainey, I said, about halfway through, I said, one thing Walz has impressed me that he is a hell of a lot more substantive than Harris, his running mate. But the question is that substance factual? He was able to do a lot of talking. So, Walz repeatedly attacked Trump as unfit to lead, for engineering an end to the constitutional right to abortion through his Supreme Court nominations, favoring the wealthy with his economic policies. Meanwhile, Vance defended Trump's record as president, saying he had brought stability to the world while repeatedly calling out Harris on inflation and immigration. Vance appeared intent on using the debate to try to refurbish his image after an introductory period that left him with low favorability ratings, mostly brought on by the media. So he talked about the need for the Republican Party to do a better job on the issue of abortion in ways that Trump never does. He talked about it the way Trump never talks about it. He also showed that he's a practiced, polished debater. But Walz showed nervousness and appeared incredibly unsteady. What was that, Kalina? Are there any unions that do not support Biden? Well, right now, the biggest, the Teamsters, doesn't support him. They did not, the Teamsters came out, beginning of last week, was it? Saying that they aren't going to endorse any candidate for the first time in like 60 years, them not endorsing a Democrat candidate. And they didn't give a reason to that, but internally, the vote among their membership had 62% of the Teamsters union members supporting Trump. 62%, that's significant. But they still came out and they said, well, we couldn't come to any consensus, so we're not going to endorse anybody. Well, that's a consensus. 62% is a winning percentage point, by the way. So there you go, folks. There's so much more. I just start repeating myself, so I'm not going to do that. And we haven't had anybody call in for tonight, want to share their opinions. So we're going to leave it at that for tonight. I appreciate you tuning in and being here. We'll be back on Friday night with probably maybe a little paranormal fare unless something else comes up. So that's all I got to say about that. I appreciate your being here, giving me your time. If you haven't already, click the little join button down below the video window in YouTube. You can find ways not to just subscribe to this channel, but to become a member of this channel. So thank you, Susie Q. She says, good show, Captain. Thank you. Yeah, wow, right, Kalina? Doesn't that change things a little bit? And so there we go. We're going to get out of here. I appreciate you being here. And for now, we're just going to back out and let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you on Friday. And until then, live long and prosper.
The Intrepid Radio Program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.